أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Continuing with Surah An-Nisa, verse number 19. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا يحل لكم أن ترثوا النساء كرها ولا تعضلوهن لتذهبوا ببعض ما آتيتموهن إلا أن يأتين بفاحشة مبينة وعاشروهن بالمعروف فإن كرهتموهن فعسى أن تكرهوا شيئا ويجعل الله فيه خيرا كثيرا. O you who have faith, it is not lawful for you to inherit women forcibly, and do not press them to take away part of what you have given them, unless they commit a gross indecency. Consort with them in an honorable manner, and should you dislike them, maybe you dislike something while Allah invests in it an abundant good. This is again about the relationship between men and women, wife and husband in the family. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا يحل لكم أن ترثوا النساء كرها. It is not lawful for you to inherit women forcibly. Now, there are three possibilities in when you want to interpret this verse. One is that women themselves are the actual object of inheritance that one receives. That when a man dies, his wife is inherited by someone else. Of course, this is forcibly, because the wife may not be happy with that. This would refer to a common custom among the Arabs, pre-Islamic Arabs, that who used to inherit the wives of their fathers or their brothers as their own wives, or as objects that could actually exchange with something else. لا يحل لكم أن ترثوا النساء كرها. Now, is this correct? Is this a possibility, a right understanding of the verse? Al-Mizan says that this cannot be the meaning of the verse, because one problem with it is that it is not compatible with the word karha, forcibly. Because if we say it is not lawful for you to inherit wives forcibly, it means that if it's not forcible, if the woman is actually happy with it, it's lawful for you to inherit her, which is of course not allowed in Islam. And it doesn't go with the context of the verse as well in the following sentences. وَلَا تَعْضُلُوهُنَّ لِتَذْهَبُوا بِبَعْضِ مَا آتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ. So this is not something that we can accept with regards to this. The second possibility is that women are those from whom one receives inheritance. لا يحل لكم أن ترثوا النساء كرها. The first meaning is that you cannot inherit women. The second is you cannot inherit from women forcibly. So here, naturally, women means wives, and this is confirmed with وَلَا تَعْضُلُوهُنَّ لِتَذْهَبُوا بِبَعْضِ مَا آتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ. Do not press them so that you take away some of the things that you have given them. This goes in line with that as well. Now, the second possibility, this was about the wives. The third possibility is that women are those from whom one receives inheritance. However, this is not confined to wives. It may refer to wives of fathers, wives of brothers, and others as well. Now, some examples are these. For example, sometimes a wealthy woman was under the guardianship of her brother or other relatives, whereby the guardian would prevent her from marriage until she would die, so that he would inherit her. لا تعضلوهن لتذهبوا بعض ما آتيتموهن makes sense here, that a person has a sister and the sister is willing to marry, but if she marries, the inheritance would go to the husband and children, so he would stop her from marrying until she dies and he gets the inheritance. Sometimes they used to sell or exchange their wives or women for some money or property. Of course, this is a wider application of inheritance. There is no inheritance here, but it means that you take money, some money for your sisters, wives, and other relatives. Now, another possibility is that it's a mix of the above. For example, when a man died, his son or his close friends would take his widow in his custody and says, this is under my guardianship and I do whatever I want with her. Now, in Al-Baydawi mentions this custom. Very briefly, of course, this has been mentioned in many narrations, but very concisely he mentions this. كان الرجل إذا مات وله عصبة ألقى ثوبه على امرأته وقال أنا أحق بها. When a man died and the woman had some male relatives, asaba, male relatives, of course, close relatives, cousins, uncles, brothers. So كان الرجل إذا مات وله عصبة ألقى ثوبه على امرأته. So he would put a cloak on or a cloth on the wife of the man who had passed away. And وقال أنا أحق بها. This is my right. ثم إن شاء تزوجها بصداقها الأول. If he wished, he would have married that woman without any mahr, because the mahr was paid by the deceased. With the same mahr, he would have married her. وإن شاء زوجها غيره وأخذ صداقها. And if he wished, he would have taken her to marriage to someone else and take the mahr for himself. The mahr of marriage. It was a kind of selling the woman to others. وإن شاء أضلها. And if he wished, he would press her, put her under constraint, تأذلوهن لتفتدي بما ورثت من زوجها, so that she would give up what she had inherited from her husband, and had given it to this asabah, this male relative. It seems that there was so many repressive and oppressive customs with regards to women before Islam, at the time of Jahiliyyah. I mean, these are just some examples of it. And we have others in Ayatul Dhahar, in other types of divorce, relationships, putting women under pressure. And you can imagine how difficult it was in such a society to change these laws. And especially when we see in the following sentences of the verse, to make it an honorable relationship between men and women. I mean, in verse 4 we read, وَآتُوا النِّسَاءَ صَدُقَاتِهِنَّ نِحْلَةً. You have to give the mahr as a gift, and you cannot take back, unless if they want to give away some of it, but you cannot do that. And these are the different ways that women were actually exploited, put under oppression by men in in that society. So it says, كان الرجل إذا مات, if a man died and the woman, the wife had male relatives, the male relative would have put a cloak on the woman and said, this is under my guardianship. And this is under my guardianship, it means I can do whatever I want. Marry her, sell her, exchange her, take her inheritance. لا يحل لكم أن ترثوا النساء كرها. It is not lawful for you to inherit women forcibly. Now, in hadith from Ibn Jarir and Ibn Abi Hatim, they say that yes, there was something else as well. And that was, he would have put the cloak on the wife of the deceased. فَإِنْ كَانَتْ جَمِيلَةً تَزَوَّجَهَا وَإِنْ كَانَتْ دَمِيمَةً حَبَسَهَا حَتَّى تَمُوتَ فَيَرِثَهَا. If she was pretty, he would have married her. If she was not pretty, he would have kept her until she died, and he inherited what she had. كرها لا يحل لكم أن ترثوا النساء كرها. Now, which one of these possibilities are more compatible with the verse? We have said there are three possibilities. One is that the women are the object of inheritance. Second, the women are those from whom one receives inheritance. And third, the women of those from whom one receives inheritance, but not in terms of wives, but in a wider sense. The second meaning is more compatible with the verse, because then it says, وَلَا تَعْضُلُهُنَّ لِتَذْهَبُوا بِبَعْضِ مَا آتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ. Do not put them under, do not press them to take away what you have given them already. So this refers to wives rather than to other women. Now, some possible examples for inheriting one's wife forcibly is, for example, forcing one's wife to write her will. And of course, about the 1/3, because she couldn't have made a will more than 1/3 in favor of her husband. This is one possibility. How one can inherit from his wife forcibly. The other was forcing the wife to hand over some of her wealth while she is alive, which of course assumes a broader meaning of inheritance. And one other possibility, keeping the wife despite her unwillingness until she dies, so that the husband would inherit from her. Not having good relationship, not having a wife and husband relationship, but just keep the wife for that purpose. And this is what the verse is, of course, advising against. Okay, وَلَا تَعْضُلُوهُنَّ لِتَذْهَبُوا بِبَعْضِ مَا آتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ. And do not press them to take away part of what you have given them. وَلَا تَعْضُلُوهُنَّ لِتَذْهَبُوا بِبَعْضِ مَا آتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ. تَعْضُلُوا is from the root word عَضْل with the dad, which is to press, to stress, to bound, and is used for any kind of a strain and constraint. And some examples is, for example, preventing a woman who is under one's guardianship from marriage, as we discussed before. Detention, lockup, imprisonment in homes, which is confirmed by what is mentioned about indecency. Not paying the required expenses of one's wife in order to put her under financial stress. And also verbal and physical abuse of one's wife, so that she would give up some of what she has received only to free herself, to accept a khula, for example. These are all prohibited by this verse. Now, if you remember, this prohibition is equivalent of the permission given in verse 4, وَآتُوا النِّسَاءَ صَدُقَاتُهُنَّ نِحْلَةً فَإِنْ طِبْنَ لَكُمْ عَنْ شَيْءٍ مِّنْهُ نَفْسًا فَكُلُوهُ هَنِيئًا مَرِيئًا. Give women their dowries as a gift, but if they remit anything of it of their own accord, then consume it as something lawful and wholesome. So if they are willing to do that, if they love each other and the wife forgoes some of her rights, some of the mahr, that's fine. But do be careful. This should not be under stress, under strain, under pressing by oppression. This is because some people may have thought that, okay, if they give, it's fine, so I do something so that they give up their mahr. This is not possible. إِلَّا أَن يَأْتِينَ بِفَاحِشَةٍ مُبَيِّنَةٍ, unless they commit a gross indecency. Gross indecency, example of it is adultery that becomes publicly known. Now, in that case, of course, man is entitled to withdraw or to refrain from giving her wife the mahr, because this has been something which may dissolve the marriage actually. So as long as a woman maintains her chastity, it is not possible. But if that is the case, if they commit fahishatan mubayyinah, something which is publicly known, then the man has the right to refrain from giving what is due to the wife. And this means, fahishat mubayyinah means that other sort of conflicts or disagreements should not stop man to give what is the right of the woman. No conflict, tension, disagreement would legitimize the husband to take back what he has given to his wife. So this sort of caveat, إِلَّا أَن يَأْتِينَ بِفَاحِشَةٍ مُبَيَّنَةٍ. And also, in committing gross indecency, what becomes lawful to the husband is just to take back some of what he has given his wife, not any other mistreatment. That is very important. In case of indecency, the only thing which the man can do is to take back some of what he has given her wife. And of course, إِلَّا أَن يَأْتِينَ بِفَاحِشَةٍ مُبَيَّنَةٍ was just a very, very rare instance. However, the general rule, standard and style of family life is وَآشِرُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, and consult with them in reasonable manner, in a manner which is commended in society. Ma'ruf is this, isn't it? What is known, commended, accepted by social norms. And social norms of Islam is certainly good treatment of everyone. وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. So consult with them in a reasonable manner means, of course, pay their expenses, pay their mahr, speak with them nice words, do have relationship with kindness and mercy, being lenient with each other. And it is interesting that in Al-Manar, in Tafsir Al-Manar, some very interesting instance of this ashiruhunna bil ma'ruf is mentioned, and that is that the husband should adorn and make up themselves for their wives, just as the wives do it for their husbands. And this has been mentioned as one instance of ashiruhunna bil ma'ruf. Overall, I mean, the two sides should make life enjoyable for each other, smooth, enjoyable, comforting. This is what the relationship between man and woman should be. And of course, in this ashiruhunna bil ma'ruf, many different meanings and layers of meanings are included. And then, what about the husbands who do not like their wives? What about the husbands who suffer from the treatment of their wives, for example? Now, the verse gives another very beautiful instruction. فَإِنْ كَرِهْتُمُهُنَّ فَعَسَىٰ أَنْ تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. And should you dislike them, do not just divorce them, do not just put them under stress, do not press them. Maybe, and should you dislike them, فَإِنْ كَرِهْتُمُوهُنَّ فَعَسَىٰ, maybe you dislike something while Allah invests in it an abundant good. Now, of course, abundant good, here it is mentioned with asa, maybe. And this is a very gentle and probabilistic way of talking to a society which is very harsh to women. A light expression to attract the acceptance of the audience for those who dislike their wives. And this shows that when one's audience are angry, frustrated, or have different norms, how should a person speak to them to attract their acceptance? Now, one can really say that this is an incredible Quranic advice. فَإِنْ كَرِهْتُمُوهُنَّ فَعَسَىٰ أَنْ تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. It leaves no excuse for mistreatment of one's wife. Even if one abhors her, dislikes her. And the same, of course, goes with the husband as well. I mean, the treatment of husband by wife as well. It says that no matter how loathsome one find their spouses, they should treat them in good manner. And keep in mind that perhaps Allah invests something good in that and in them. And we have examples of very highly spiritual people, accomplished people, spiritually, people who are spiritually accomplished, that accomplishment has come because of practicing this instruction. That although they disliked, although they were abused by their wives, now examples are by their wives, but because they had patience, then Allah invested them with great spiritual stations. Now, some possibilities for good in the verse. وَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. What this khair may be? Maybe you do not like your wife, but Allah would grant you righteous progeny, which would be your honor in this world and your interceders in the next world, those who intercede you in the next world, through a wife that you may dislike. Another khair is that the wife may actually create a very peaceful ambience in the house, serving the husband in a way that husband does not need to do many things by himself. Another example is that wife taking care of the husband later when he reaches an old age and falls ill. And what great khair is that if the wife actually nursed the husband in that situation. And what I mentioned, the spiritual elevation, growth of one's self as a result of behaving properly with one's wife, despite the dislike. And of course, above all, يَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا, abundant reward in the hereafter for following God's command. Now, we have only one other expression with regards to khayran kathira. Here it says, in your wives that you dislike, Allah may have invested khayran kathira, great good. Now, in another verse which this is used is about wisdom. يؤتي الحكمة من يشاء ومن يؤتى الحكمة فقد أوتي خيرا كثيرا. He gives wisdom to anyone he likes, and whoever is given wisdom is given abundant good, khayran kathira. And the context of that verse is to disobey shaitan, which gives you false promises, as shaitan ya'idukum al-faqr wa ya'murukum bil-fahsha wallahu ya'idukum maghfiratan minhu wa fadla wallahu wasi'un alim. Now, shaitan frightens you of poverty and prompts you to commit indecent acts, and Allah, of course, promises you maghfirah. And one result of that maghfirah is hikmah and wisdom, which is khayran kathira. And one other khayran kathira is what God may invest in your wives. Beautiful. I mean, one is amazed how the Quran has talked about this. Now, فَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَقَدْ يَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. We have one other expression in the Quran as well. عَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. With regards to ayatul qital, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ وَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Warfare has been prescribed for you. Though it's repulsive to you, yet it may be that you dislike something while it is good for you, and you may like something that's not good for you. You see, when we compare these to each other, it all ties in with each other. Fighting is very repulsive, but there may be great good in it. You may dislike your wife, but if you treat her nicely, Allah may put great abundant good in that. The command to treat women in a reasonable manner, of course, is not restricted to happy life. It's actually when tension comes up as well, especially at the time of divorce, as we have فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ وَأَوْ سَرِّحُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ. This, of course, is with regards to عَاشِرُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Even at the time of divorce, either honorably keep them or honorably release them, and make the whole issue of divorce an honorable matter, which is, of course, sometimes very difficult to do. Now, what we can actually conclude from all this is that the way the Quran, the way Islam approaches this issue of relationship with man and woman, which sometimes may go very sore. In some societies, it may be oppressive by men, especially we saw how oppressive it was in the Arab society before Islam. The Quran is advising absolute opposite of that. It's advising to عَاشِرُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. It's advising you should not force them to anything. It advises to honorable treatment. عاشروهن بالمعروف. It advises even if things go unpleasant, you keep that honorable status and honorable treatment. And above all, if you have patience when things are not the way you like it, if you have patience when you feel some dislike towards your spouse, and you consider it for the sake of God, for the sake of family, for the sake of children, for the sake of good of the society, and for the sake of good of your spouse, then Allah will reward you abundant good, which is not imaginable for us. And beyond that, what He gives in the hereafter in terms of reward and higher ranks in paradise. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.